Alright, so Spider-Man Homecoming isn't the best Spider-Man film and probably doesn't occupy a high ranking in your list of favorite Spider-Man movies. Common complaints include the whole high school setting and Spider-Man's over-reliance on the high-tech suit, making him an Iron Man Jr. of sorts. But upon rewatching the film recently, I've come to appreciate it a bit more in light of the deeper themes being conveyed, and in this video we'll explore some of those. The first one is that of moral ambiguity. Is the law always right, and even if it is it applied consistently and fairly across the board? The main proponent of this theme is the film's central antagonist, Adrian Toomes, a working-class man who turns to a life of crime after a contentious situation with the DoD. Toomes is breaking the law by selling illegal weapons, but he justifies it with a comparison to Tony Stark, a man who built a vast fortune through weapons manufacturing, which has inadvertently resulted in much death and destruction. Yet despite this history, Tony is celebrated by the public and held up as a hero. So, in the mind of Toomes, he must be thinking that surely his level of damage is nowhere near as high as Tony's, so in his book, he must still be morally better off. The film makes other ties to this theme of moral ambiguity, one of which is seen with the perception of Captain America. Coach Wilson mentions that he's probably a criminal now after the events of Civil War, a notion that stirs up the debate if Cap actually did anything wrong to deserve such a title. Next, in one of Spider-Man's street patrols, he comes across a supposed car thief whom he apprehends, but as it turns out, the guy is actually the owner who probably locked his keys inside the car and has no other way to retrieve them but to break in. All these examples drive home the issue of moral ambiguity. All is not as it might seem at first glance. Those who appear guilty might not be as evil as we think, and those propped up by the public might have more skeletons in the closet that we just don't see. To tie this back to Toomes, it's notable that he sees himself as a man of principle. He lets Peter off with a warning due to the fact that he saved his daughter's life at the decathlon and refrains from divulging his secret identity due to the fact that Peter saved his life earlier. So, from a moral perspective, Toomes is in somewhat of a gray area, which greatly humanizes him. He's guilty of several misdeeds, but at the same time, he exhibits some virtuous traits. So Toomes is somewhat of a contradiction, and this is reflected in his outfit as well. He wears an old-fashioned flight jacket from another era, signifying his traditional values and an old-school approach to life. While on top of that jacket, he wears an advanced wingsuit powered by modern alien technology, showing that he is adaptable to change. But when we get to the heart of the issue, there are some things in life that are ambiguous, and some that are just clear-cut right or wrong. Sometimes, at the end of the day, a childlike innocence can trump even the most sophisticated self-justification. Toomes berates Peter for not understanding how the world works, but Peter astutely retorts that despite his possible ignorance, he knows that selling weapons to criminals is always wrong. Moving on, the film also explores the theme of ambition and ascension. Symbolically, Toomes is nicknamed the Vulture, which is somewhat relevant to his collecting of scrap material leftovers from the Avengers battlegrounds. Spider-Man is also somewhat in the same boat, in the sense that he feels left out of the big leagues and is designated the so-called scraps of serving street-level duties, like stopping bicycle thieves and helping older ladies with directions. Visually, this is hinted to us when Peter first dons the suit, in the back alley of a dumpster area, which is perhaps the filmmaker's way of showing an outward reflection of Peter's inner dissatisfaction. So Toomes and Peter are similar in terms of being at the bottom, but their level of ambitions couldn't be more different. Peter wishes to ascend to the heights of the Avengers, a notion which is comically referenced in the ATM heist scene, an ironic play on Peter's ambitions as he encounters low-level street thugs dressed up as Earth's mightiest heroes. I'd imagine that Peter feels the opposite, that he is an Avengers-level hero stuck at the street level. For Toomes, on the other hand, he wishes to remain under the radar and is content to continue his present course. He's quite well off financially, as we can see by his luxurious house, yet despite his wealth, his base of operations is still a small rundown warehouse when he can definitely afford to upgrade. Expounding on this theme of ambition, the film adds onto it with the notion of using shortcuts or taking the easy way out. Both the hero and villain are guilty of this. For Peter, his shortcut is using the fame of others to boost himself, whether it's forming his identity around Tony Stark's internship or as the friend of Spider-Man. Without these two enhancements, so to speak, Peter is somewhat of a loser, at the bottom of the social ladder. When he arrives for Liz's party, Peter tells Ned he just wants to be himself, to which Ned says, "Nobody wants that." However, with his association with Tony Stark and possibly Spider-Man, Peter's social score is boosted to the point that he gets the attention of his crush, Liz. But it's all based on a lie and destined to fail, and their relationship goes south as the circumstances are played out. So Peter is not just literally relying on the suit physically to aid him as Spider-Man, he's also relying on it for his social boost. When Tony demands the suit back, Peter replies that he's nothing without the suit. From a social perspective, this statement rings true. As for Toomes, he takes the easy way out in his criminal exploits. It's easier to monopolize alien technology, while it's harder to simply go out and make an honest living under fair market conditions. Both Peter and Toomes took the easy route, and both eventually found that they didn't pay off in the long run. There's a saying that the longest way round is the shortest way home, or, in other words, cutting corners will simply cause you to spend more time than if you did things the right way to begin with. This phrase is relevant for Toomes, who ends up in jail and his family moving to another state. An ironic and tragic fate, given that his criminal exploits were all done in the name of taking care of his family. Both Peter and Toomes lived a double life with double identities, and as we see by the end of the film, this proved to be unsustainable. Peter eventually gets found out by his aunt, and we know the story for Toomes. But interestingly, perhaps it's because Toomes lived a double life that he was so quick to catch on to Peter being Spider-Man. It's been said that it takes one to know one, and the phrase is applicable here, as any of Peter's classmates should have their suspicions raised when Spider-Man just conveniently happened to show up at the Washington Monument right when he was needed. And finally, we come to the central theme of the film, the one found in the film's title, that of homecoming. For the majority of the movie, Peter was set on joining the Avengers, and yet, at the end, when the opportunity is presented before him on a silver platter, he turns it down. To reconcile such a change in his mindset, we need to look at an earlier conversation Peter had with Tony at the park. When Tony tells him that the Vulture would be taken care of, Peter asks if the Avengers would be involved. So clearly he thinks that the Vulture is an enemy worthy of the Avengers. But lo and behold, as it turns out, the Vulture is simply a suburban middle-aged man living within his vicinity, and even the father of his girl crush. I believe this is where the turning point happens. All of a sudden, being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man feels a lot more important than he originally thought, and that there is a sense of purpose where he is right now without having to ascend to the big leagues. Deploying the Avengers to deal with the Vulture is overkill, while the FBI would not be able to physically stop him. The best compromise would be a street-level enforcer like himself. This, I feel, is the true essence of homecoming for Spider-Man. The dictionary defines homecoming as an instance of returning home or a reunion of former students to their previous school. Besides the obvious homecoming event in the narrative of the film, the true homecoming was for Peter to realize that his value and purpose was already right where he was, and this realization was his coming home to being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But what do you think? What other themes did you notice in Spider-Man Homecoming? Let me know in the comments, and perhaps drop a suggestion for another film you'd like me to discuss.